Anybody watching, if you guys have any questions about real estate or business questions, Jeff's got experience with leadership. He's got a extensive military background. So if you have questions there, more than welcome to add them in the chat.
Yeah, man.
All right, cool. We're
To be
live.
here. Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it, Quinn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to introduce Jeff. First off, Jeff served in the U.S. Army Special Operations in the 2nd Ranger Battalion. He used his discipline and strategic action when he came back to civilian life to escape an office job. Now he owns multiple businesses. He's built a portfolio of 70 plus units. He owns a self storage facility, and he's coached hundreds of entrepreneurs and business leaders through the past 10 years through his masterminds. So I'd say you're the definition of a entrepreneur, a leader, and a high achiever. So thanks so much for being here, Jeff.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited you brought me on here. I'm excited to come to your event in a couple weeks. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So I'm happy to jam on any of the topics that you mentioned, and
yeah, for
RV,
sure.
outdoor activities as well. Those are my jam, man.
Awesome, man. I love to hear that. I'm an outdoors guy too. Well, I want to get started on like how you got into entrepreneurship, because obviously that's even just going from the army to civilian life. That's a huge change. But what made you decide to jump into the business world and become an entrepreneur? Was that something you always wanted to do, or was it kind of a change of events that made you want to go into that space?
I think it was kind of just a natural, like, anti-authority type move, if you will.
Yeah.
I went into the corporate world after I got out of the military, and worked at a Fortune 50 company for a long time. And but early on, I was interested in real estate and things like that. I didn't like qualified plans. I didn't like 401ks. None of it really made sense to me because I like being in control of my money, stuff like that. So I bought an apartment complex when I was 26 years old, and that was kind of my first foray into investing and pseudo business ownership, I guess you could call it. It was just a 7-unit apartment, and it learned a lot of lessons. That was a really good property for me. And after that, we had some single family homes. We were in real estate from like 2006 to 2013. And then I owned a gym for 12 years that I started as well.
Okay.
Which is how I got into like fitness business mentoring and running masterminds in that space. And so along the way, I was kind of hedging. So like I work with a bunch of W-2 guys that are trying to like bridge the gap, and I lived that life for a long time. So I've got a lot of experience there. I'm not really a burn the boats kind of guy. If you have capacity to do both, I think it's better to hang on and stack cash and do it in a very strategic way, as opposed to just, conventional wisdom would tell you that if you have your back against the wall and you have nothing else, like you're going to produce, right? And that is true. And I probably held on to my corporate job a little too long because I got like golden handcuffs, if you will. It was nice to have both. It's tough to make that decision. And but man, once you get cut loose, it's really a nice feeling of the intentionality of eating what you kill, and like it's up to you and all of that, and just being able to produce money at a whim. Like, hey, like we want to have a different month this month. What do you think I put on this course or sell this particular training, or we have a big month, and it changes your personal take home by 10, 20, 30, 40 grand. And you're like, oh, well, you can't do that in the corporate world. So
absolutely. Yeah. I like how Myron Golden puts it. 9 to 5 people are limited by their time. They perceive everything by how much time things cost, and entrepreneurs perceive, how much money they can make by their creativity, because it's infinite. Literally, if you can create enough value for the marketplace, you can demand any price. You can make as much money as you possibly want. You look at Elon Musk; he's taking people to Mars.
Yeah.
So it's incredible.
The real thing, the hardest thing, in my opinion, of coming out of the corporate world into a business ownership standpoint, or a business ownership career, if you will, is like, if you haven't had like a full on commission sales job, like, you don't understand managing your time in the way that's necessary as an entrepreneur. And
Yeah.
like, I think that's the hardest transition for people, is like, they wake up Monday morning and they're like, ho dee do, I assume I'll have a bunch of
Yeah.
meetings or something. And like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was the same for me when the first real commission job I had was a real estate agent. And I thought I was just going to come in guns blazing and leads were just going to fall from the sky. And I got a rude awakening.
Sure.
Uh, had to learn how to prospect and market and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's definitely a totally different mindset. But I want to go back to the apartment complex that you had your first deal. That to me, that's kind of backwards from what most people do. Normally, they'll either house hack or they'll buy an investment property first. But you bought a 7-unit complex. What did that look like, and how did you get into that large unit for your first property?
Well, I just really, it seemed like a good idea. I didn't really know enough. It was
Yeah,
just dumb and young, and I just went for it. And I looked around town with what I was doing. I was working a corporate job. I was a single guy with no kids, and I didn't need a bunch, right?
yeah,
So for me, it was like, why would I go buy 7 different houses all around town and take the slow path when I have the capital to be able to push on this thing? And
yeah,
yes, I pushed probably the top end of my capital to get into the deal, but then from a capital expenditure standpoint, I really wasn't worried about it, because I was like, well, you know what? If I got to cash flow this thing a couple months with my own salary, like, no big deal, because
yeah,
nobody was depending on me at the time, right? I didn't have mouths to feed. I was like, I can make this thing work somehow. And
yeah.
so I I think it was both ignorance was bliss, and like, I just went for it. And
Yeah.
lending was different in 2006 though. I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
literally went there and I didn't have any money. Like, that
Yeah.
I didn't have any money that I wanted to put down for the thing. I had enough I had enough income to do it, and I had
Yeah.
enough assets on paper to do the deal. And so I had to literally go in there and sell the bank that it was a good investment for them to do. And they
Yeah.
ended up lending me the money for the down payment, and as a bridge, and then they took on the mortgage too. So I was able to
Gotcha.
get that with like almost zero out of pocket. And it
That's
was,
awesome.
I mean, you can't do those deals anymore
Yeah.
at all. They really don't exist. But I mean, you can do capital stacks and things like that, but they're a lot harder and more complicated to get into now than they were in '06. But um,
Yeah.
that deal it taught me a million lessons,
Yeah.
and it was good from that standpoint. But to answer your question, I mean, for me, it seemed better to have 6 doors under one roof. And like, now that I know what I know, I'm like, man, that was actually a good decision.
Yeah.
But I didn't. It wasn't. I would like to say it was because I knew so much, but it wasn't.
Well, yeah, I don't think you're giving yourself as much credit as you actually need to, because it's probably your intuition more than anything. I mean, it looked like a good deal. It felt like a good deal. All the information and stuff that you've read up to that point gave you the confidence to go into it. So it wasn't just a deal fell in your lap and you just pulled the trigger. You had all the indicators and you did enough research to invest with caution but also confidence. And I think that's what a lot of people lack. They'll invest time and dedication to learning something for years and never actually pull the trigger. There's no action taken.
Yes. Yeah, like mental masturbation. You just go out and you take
Yep.
every single course possible and learn and learn and learn and learn. I've had moments in my life when I've done that and just over
Yeah.
consumed education. And I'm like, none of this fucking matters. You know enough to do anything. Like really, besides fly rockets to Mars, like you mentioned earlier, I'm not doing that. But like most of the stuff I take on, I really don't need any education about it. Just get into it and do it ultimately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think if your starting point, your ending point, and maybe some big, um, uh, anything big in between start and finish, like that's all you really need to know. Anytime I've tried to learn the entire process, I looked back and I'm like, wow, I just wasted so much time.
Well, I mean, just like combat, honestly, like you don't know, bad shit's going to happen no matter what. And so,
Yeah.
like, if you just wait to start the mission until you know every variable, like, you're never going to go. And so,
Yeah.
like, you just have to understand real estate is the same way. Like, the best
Yeah.
thing you can possibly do is go buy a single family home. If you're scared to death, just go buy one single family home that's super affordable for you and learn all the lessons with that.
Yeah.
Because you don't you're never going to be able to imagine what could go wrong with that particular property
Yeah.
until you just start messing with it.
Yeah, definitely. And in most people's situation anyway, they don't have anything to lose. I mean, like you just starting out, you didn't have a family or anything. You had a job, so you could float the payments. Worst case scenario, you resold the property.
Right.
And people are so scared of failure. And what they don't realize is the worst thing that's going to happen is they end up right where they are. So if that's the worst case scenario, then they're already living their worst case scenario.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you, probably the number one thing in retrospect of that particular deal that it taught me is that like a couple things. Money will find deals for sure. Like if you have a good deal, you can get financing, but also the fact that like the relationships matter so thoroughly, like in this business, because there's a million ways to get things done. Like the answer is never no. It's just how willing are you how willing are you to try different things to get it done,
Yeah.
and what are you willing to do? So like, I mean, I deal with clients all the time, coaching people on that come to me and they're like, well, the bank won't give me the money, and I'm like, you went down one single avenue that is like
Yeah.
an FHA loan, like now we just turn and there's
Yeah.
13 other tracks to take down here that we've got to try first. And the answer is never, like, you're never dead until you just stop trying.
Yeah.
Especially if it's
Absolutely.
like if there's money to be made on the whole situation, then you can find people to get things done. You can find the money.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, just like you said, it's guys that you're mentoring. That's why mentorship's so important. I mean, a couple of my first deals, I had no idea how to make them work. I thought they were dead. And I reached out to my network, walked them through the steps and things that we had done and what the deal looked like. And they gave me 4 or 5 different ways that I could make the deal work. And I
Yeah.
ended up using one of those and going through with the purchase. And it just amazed me how there were so many things I wasn't seeing just because I haven't gone through those experiences in the past. But the mentorship's extremely important.
I'll tell you what, that's especially true today with the state of the banking industry and everything. Like, I see so much creativity happening in the market right now that like your conventional lenders would tell you is impossible.
Yeah,
But I mean, you if you're aligned with investors out here watching what's going on, you're like, holy shit, these guys are so creative. That's
yeah,
fascinating. I mean, they're getting things done legally and above board, of course, but like it, there's people that are far more driven than me that are like, this deal is never dead, never. And
yeah,
we will wrap this thing 6 ways to Sunday and sub to it and do all kinds of shit. And I'm just like,
yeah.
okay, all right, whatever.
Absolutely,
So
for
it's
sure, man.
that's what attracts me to real estate, though. It
Yeah,
allows you to kind of, it's a numbers game, but it does allow you to be very creative with things too.
yeah,
And no two deals are really the same, honestly, when you're an actual like real investor doing these different deals, whether the capital stack is different or how creative you had to get with that particular thing, or you're assuming loans or you're taking seller financing or whatever you're doing. Almost every deal is different, which is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So how long ago was that first deal that you did? Like how long have you been in the real estate space?
So my story's interesting in that we did a few deals in Illinois. That's where I bought that apartment because that's where we lived at the time. 2006 to 2013, I owned property in Illinois. I moved
Okay.
to Texas in 2008, and we've lived in Houston ever since. And so in 2011, I opened a gym. So I was running a gym and doing my W-2 job, and we own the properties back in Illinois. And in 13, I sold all those properties in Illinois. And I'm like, we're not moving back to Illinois. We're not going back up there. I'm not going to keep these properties, blah, blah, blah. And so I was out of the game from like 13 until 2019. And then 2019, I started buying again. And
That's awesome.
that's when we've snatched up about, I mean, we've probably bought 50 properties ourselves, personally, me and my wife. And then we own another 28 down in Corpus Christi that is part of a syndication that I'm a general partner on. And then we just bought the 128 unit self-storage that we're doing a full rehab, and we're gonna syndicate that as well. We're gonna raise capital on it to do the rehab and give up some shares of equity on that just to not mess with the bank and move it along faster. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. So those 100 units that you have that are like residential
Yeah.
property, are those mostly single family, all apartments? What does that spread look like?
It's a mixture of small multi-units and single family. And so everything 1 to 6 or 1 to 8. And
Gotcha.
so we've got a handful all over the Houston area. That's
Gotcha.
predominantly where everything is owned within an hour of Houston.
Yeah.
And then
Awesome.
the storage facility is 20 minutes from Houston.
That's awesome. So if somebody wanted to buy like, let's call it 20 units to, retire themselves from their job or go full-time real estate in the next 3 to 5 years, what would be your best advice for them? Let's say they make 50 grand a year, nothing crazy, but average. What would be your first steps to get them to those 20 units and out of the rat race?
Well, they probably have limited capital with that kind of salary, I would think. And so like
Yeah.
you'd have to burr into the properties. And so like you're going to have to buy distressed properties, 50 cents on the dollar, whatever. And go in and put rehab budget together on them, which would allow you to go in with a limited amount of capital because you could hard money into them. And then at the second close, you would get basically whatever your down payment is back if you bought right and rehabbed them correctly.
Yeah.
I got very good at burring properties. We've done more burrs, and we've sold a bunch of properties in the last 2 years as well. And but I came into 2019 to 2022, I burred a ton of properties, and we rolled through them. But ultimately, the way to do it is if you wanted to do it in 3 years, you would have to get very good at burring properties, and you should buy like 40 properties.
Yeah.
And then hold them for 2 or 3 years, let the interest rate settle back down a little bit. That's going to spike appreciation. You're going to see 20% appreciation again for a couple of years once we see 4% rates again, or somewhere in the fours, because that's going to bring a big glut of buyers back into the marketplace.
Yeah.
So if you do that and you have 40 properties, you allow those properties to appreciate slightly for 2 years. So we're at 2026, 2027 at this point.
Yep.
Then you sell 15 or 20 of them. At that point, you dump roll those proceeds back in based on the appreciation and the capital capture that you had. And then hopefully you could pay off somewhere between 12 and 15 of the 20 that you're holding. And then you just pile your extra savings into those last remaining properties using the 12 paid off properties, considering that they would probably do somewhere between 1,100 and 1,500 a month with your capital expenses that you have. And if you have management in place, you'd probably still do somewhere around $1,200 net out of that. So if you had 12 properties doing $1,200 a month, you'd be at 1,440, 1,400. You could probably pay off a house every 6 months that way. And so you'd have two more by the end of the year. If you got 15 done, you'd be at 17. You'd be pretty close to your 20. With $15,000 of free and clear cash flow at that point. So if you were making fucking 50, you'd be done. Like, because you've already changed your life because
absolutely.
So because
I think
your tax bracket would change too, based on the way that you're earning that income. So your 30% tax rate would go down to 15% because of cap gains and how you're earning your money. And that's after you get out of the business. While you're burring them, you're a real estate professional. You wouldn't pay any taxes on any of the real estate that comes in because of the deductibility of the work that you're putting into it.
Absolutely. That's a great strategy. That's probably exactly what I would recommend, honestly. And then the great thing is, if you're younger like me, like, it's a great strategy because you have the cash flow where you can buy another unit like every 3 or 4 months with the cash flow that you already have. And then over time, pay those off and just continue buying more. If you need more cash for a larger project, refinance your portfolio, put it into a apartment complex, and do like Jeff's doing with, working up to those larger unit facilities. But that's a great strategy. I think people overcomplicate the process. I mean, people like us will tell them exactly what to do, and they're like, well, it can't be that simple, but it really is.
You also think they think you need way more money than you need. So like a typical hard money lender will do 10% down on the purchase price. So if you're in BFE Midwest, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, like Kentucky, Tennessee, you want to buy in those areas, and you're buying, and your target is after repaired value of $180,000, you're buying at like $70,000, $90,000, guys. And so like, even if your hard money lender is 10% down, which not all of them are, some of them are zero, just so you know. You're talking $7,000 or $9,000 to get into the deal. They'll finance your entire rehab for you, 100% of it. And then on the close, if you did your math right, you can potentially get your whole $7,000 back or $9,000 back once it's rented. If you can do them right that way. So like, even if you do them wrong, you're into the thing for 15 grand. And you've got $180,000 house. You've paid $15,000 out of pocket cash to get into a $180,000 house, which now has somewhere between 15 and 25% equity. So $25,000 to $40,000 worth of equity. And that goes straight to your net worth, bottom line. So
I mean, especially if you start out making 50 grand a year, that's huge. That's really big.
That's what I was thinking. You threw me off with that salary. So like, that was stuck in my head the whole time. I was like, it doesn't matter. You can't fuck this up. This guy's going to change its entire life in 3 years. Completely.
Exactly. Exactly. If they just try. They just put forth the effort. So obviously you weren't born with this knowledge. Did you have a mentor or anybody that helped you along the way? Somebody that you could ask questions if you had any problems? Like, what did that look like as far as the help you were getting?
I've been in like every real estate group, I feel like. The very first like high end one I signed up for was called Lifestyles Unlimited in Houston. It's a very big group. Their primary mission is to do passive investments and big syndications with W-2 employees. And so like all the oil and gas energy workers here in Houston that are fully planning on keeping their day job, they take hundreds of thousands of dollars from those guys and put together these apartment syndications. So I went in there. Their model was so perfect to teach me everything about burring, teach me everything I needed, because their model is buy 10 houses. So it starts with single family homes, buy your first 10 houses and then sell those off and use that equity to get into syndications and start buying apartments. And so like that's the life cycle of the what they teach. And the education was top notch. It was fantastic about like the tips and tricks that they teach you, which is like repair everything structural and foundational, like all the HVAC, all the electrical, rewire everything, replumb everything. You want to do every single thing on the way in with the bank's money so that you don't have any maintenance costs for 5 years. And then you want to unload that property at year 4 or 5, because then you're going to start running into some replacement costs on things. But the model that they taught was go in and use the bank's money for every single thing to replace everything from the ground up almost. And with the idea that you're not going to have any maintenance or expenses really for the first 4 or 5 years. So no water heater is going to go out on you. You're not going to have to replace like dumb shit, like a 30-year-old HVAC. You just do that on the way in. And like, I think that was one of the best lessons that I've learned from any group, really. Because nobody else is really that stringent about it, but that was like their rules. They were like, this is the way that you do things. You do not leave a 25-year-old air conditioner out there, because as soon as you don't want it to break, it will break. And as soon as you're broke, it's going to break. As soon as, and so I thought that was a very good lesson for early investors, for sure. And it makes sense. So if you build your budget on your rehab budget to replace all that stuff on the way in, you just sleep better at night. You've got a better property. It appraises higher. Like there's just so much good to it. And you didn't use any of your own cash to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And how much was that investment group? Do you remember?
It was $25,000 to be in the preferred investors group, and which is the level that I bought in at.
That's awesome. And I know the answer already, but would you say you made your money back?
Yeah. I didn't at the time. I was a education consumer at that point in time. I did not really do any deals, because I got into that group in 2013, I think. And then I sat on my hands and like, I made a bunch of excuses that I was focused, because the reason that I sold my real estate and then didn't do anything from 2013 to 2018 is because I didn't fucking have my business figured out over at the gym. Yeah. And so the gym was not really cranking along until like 2015, 2016. And so I had lessons still to learn over there, and I didn't want any distractions. So I had money, but the timing wasn't really right. And I didn't want to shift focus and burn my gym down. And so, which in retrospect, I mean, I don't know if that was a good idea or a bad idea, but I mean, real estate seems to fit me better than the gym business. And so,
I'd say so too.
It just has a lot more upside, a lot less service components to it. And gym industry is a fickle business.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you've coached hundreds of guys. You've obviously been in plenty of mentorship groups. Why is mentorship so important? Like, what value do you see out of it?
I don't know where the philosophy came from to me to always seek out like coaches and mentors. I don't know if it was college football and then special operations or what, but man, I am a modeler. Like I do not want to fuck around with like going all the way back to zero and learning. Like, that's not my deal. Like, I want to plug in with the people that are doing exactly what I want to be doing. And I want to say, like, show me what you're doing. I'll buy everything, because I'm sucking like that stuff. Like, because and so that kind of bites me in the ass, because I move way too fast. Because I'm like, what apps do I need? I'll buy this software. What CRM do I need? And like, I do everything up front. And they're like, Jeff, you don't have like a seven-figure business yet. And I'm like, I'm gonna in about 2 weeks. Just wait. And it doesn't always go that way, right? But ultimately the reason coaches are important and mentors are important is because like they eliminate mistakes because they've made mistakes. So I don't have to
Yeah.
go spend the next 2 years making those mistakes. And then they also compress time for me because I don't want to waste any more time, and they speed up the results that I'm looking for. So like
Yeah.
if I know who's out there doing 7 or 8 figures or buying this amount of this particular asset class in a year, I'm going to go ask them like, what does it take to get coaching calls with you? Show me what you're doing. And then I'm going to watch what they do on a regular basis. And they're like, well, I throw 100 offers a week. And I'm like, holy shit. All right, well, how do we do that? And so I want them to show me what it looks like to get there, because this stuff is not rocket science. Like I'm no smarter than anybody else. I can assure you that. Like I'm just a regular guy that's willing to get up and do the same thing over and over again. And like when you watch the actions of others that are successful, like it leaves clues. And it's not some like wonderful blessing and talent they have. They just broke down like the fundamentals of what they need to do on a regular basis, and they've either done them longer or they've done them better than those people around them. And a lot of times it's longer, quite frankly. I'm getting old enough now, and I've been in the game long enough that I see this different level of success from like year 10 to 20, and then year 20 to beyond is like, oh, all you got to do is keep doing this shit and like you're fine. And so but that's against everything like innately within us. We want to go fast. And so
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've seen it explained in like the hockey stick graph, where you have this slow but consistent growth, and then all of a sudden you learn all the skills and you beat that learning curve, and your growth just shoots up. And as you continue to do the things that you learned over and over again over time, you just stay on that trajectory, and you get, like you said, 10, 20 years down the road, and you're light years ahead of everybody else, just because you built the foundation and you continue down the same path. You're not bounced around back and forth to different businesses. You're staying focused with your head down and still working. So
yeah, but
totally
I mean,
agree.
just like money, it's like Kent Clothier says, there's nothing more powerful than uninterrupted compounding interest, right?
Yeah.
And if you view your career as compound interest, where you're picking up skills and here and there, but if you're shifting focus every 7 years, you're zeroing your compounding effect. And it may not go to zero per se, but like if you do the same stuff for a long period of time, and I've kind of just really taken that to heart with regards to my investing. I'm like, I just really have to look at the long tail of this and understand that like, as long as I don't do something really stupid and I just keep it moving for the next 15 years, like it's an unstoppable train that's coming.
Yeah.
So like, just don't sell everything off and keep in the game, keep your skills sharp and keep moving forward and making progress. But like, it doesn't have to be to the point where like it's to the detriment of my family, or like I'm supposedly working these 16-hour days or grinding it out. It's just really, I'm at the point where it's just slow and steady. And to your point, like if you buy a property or an asset a quarter, like you're still moving things, right?
Yeah.
Now, this last year has been a turbulent economic environment, and lending has changed so dramatically in the commercial space. It has really thrown a lot of people off. But I just think it's a hiccup in where we're going. I mean, commercial will be a mess for a little bit, but like I said, like guys I was talking about before, they're out there scheming and planning and doing stuff, and things are getting done. There's never been this much private money available ever in my life. And so like it's positioning winners that are sitting on the sidelines that haven't really had that opportunity before too.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, to put together $1 million of capital is not a huge ask right now, because no one really wants to be exposed to the stock market. There's like so much volatility out there that they're like, okay, we can park this in something that you'll pay me 12% on or 8% on or something like that. And you'll give me a preferred rate of return. Like, you can set up deals like that all day, and there's the capital out there with the appetite to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we got one more question, then we'll wrap things up. But
So,
you're speaking at our event at the end of this month. Put yourself in somebody's shoes that's, at a place in their life or business where they're just trying to get to that next level, whatever that is, whether it's health, whether it's their mental state, their wealth, their finances, long-term vision. Why is it so valuable to get in this room? I mean, it's $2,500 base price to get around all these people. Why is that so valuable for somebody that doesn't see the value yet?
because $2,500 is not, it's a significant investment, but it's not a huge investment to make in yourself. So when you talk about investing in yourself, that's the number one investment you can possibly make. If you have less than $50,000, like, maybe you could be looking at real estate, but like, you should really be looking at education and skills, because those are things that people cannot take away from you. Like, your ability to network and connect with other people, which is what's going to happen at this event, along with the skills you can acquire and the knowledge set that you can acquire, are invaluable. So, I mean, I look at things that I attend as far as like, okay, what's the ROI I could get out of it? And you look at $2,500 and you think about that, spread that out across a year's time frame, and you're talking about like $200 a month.
Yeah.
And if you have a business, that's, I mean, maybe one client, it might be way less. But that is not that hard to recapture. And if you view your investments in yourself that way, like, if I pay $2,500, can I go out and make $3,000? Okay, then that's a net arbitrage of a positive deal, right?
Yeah.
And so if you start looking that way about you investing in yourself, like, it's a never ending acquisition of knowledge, skills, and community. And that will lead you to the next thing that you cannot forecast right now. Because I've been getting in these rooms for years now. And I can tell you 10 years ago, I didn't know what trajectory I was on necessarily. I thought I was going in a direction potentially. But like, now I do my own thing. I run a couple different businesses. I've got the Tactical Empire Mastermind, all that stuff. But like, I also have relationships on the side that I've made within these groups where we're starting businesses. We're buying different assets together as joint ventures with people that I have done life with for the last 5 years, that I trust, that I want to spend time with their family. That, I mean, we share a vibrational level of like how we're going to operate and what we're doing. And so, to simplify your question, like, you have to raise the level of the people that you surround yourself with if you have an expectation to raise your results.
Yeah.
And the people that are in that room are at least the guys that are speaking, have done things, and they're already operating at a different level. So like, when I talk about being a like prototypical modeler of people, like, I would go in there, observe people, I would talk to people, I would make relationships. Like, I'm sure the people in the crowd are going to be just as high level as the speakers. And so like, it's a tremendous opportunity to get around people that you can exponentially get an infinite return on that investment based on the skills and the relationships you could bring into your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to go back to getting around people like that, because like that's really the whole reason why I'm holding this event. I went to a mansion mastermind 2 years ago. I thought I was doing big things. I come from a small town of 25,000 people. I wasn't cocky, but I was confident in what I'd accomplished. And I got in that room, and it was $5,000 to get into the house, and I was the absolute smallest person there.
Yeah.
The smallest. The next smallest was like a $10 million portfolio. I was like, wow, I'm missing something. And one relationship that I made with another guest there, not even a speaker, saved me over $60,000 in the next 6 months. It's not including extra money that I made this was something I could actually track by one piece of advice he gave me about my business that changed how we did everything. Saved me 60 grand in 6 months. And that was when I decided to hold another event just like it for me and people in my space. It's just, it's a whole nother level when you get around people that are just like you, because we don't have a ton of people like that in our communities. Like
Sure.
most people watching this right now, they probably think they're all alone, that nobody thinks like them. That's why they don't have a ton of friends. That was me. I had to go to Arizona or Texas or some other place to find somebody that even thought like me, because everyone else wanted to talk about, "Hey, let's go out Friday night. Let's do this Friday night. Let's go on vacation. Let's do this." I want to build an empire. I don't want to mess around and watch the football game. I want to do something huge that impacts hundreds, thousands of lives. And so it's in rooms like this where you meet people like that, and it really makes an exponential impact on your trajectory as a person, in your business, with your relationships, your mindset. It changes your whole perspective and opens your mind to what's actually possible. And that's really why we're doing this.
Yeah. And a couple things I would say, if you'll give me a second,
Absolutely.
if this is your first time coming into a room like this, just understand that everybody has the same type of imposter syndrome that you're thinking about. Like, I mean, I've got $10 million of real estate, but in the rooms I enter, that's fucking nothing. It's not
Yeah.
shit. And like, I mean, the guys I run around with put together hundreds of millions of dollars of portfolios. They'll buy $100 million in a year. And I'm just like, oh, and that's inspiring. It's not something to shrink away from. It's just like, okay, like that's a different level. Like, do I want to
Yeah.
operate at that level? Maybe, but I think I could turn it up from 10 million to 20 million at least if they're doing 100. Fuck, like that. you just have to understand that, like, nobody's out. The coolest thing about running around in groups like this is that nobody's hating on anybody. Everybody's
Yeah.
out there running their own race, and like everybody also feels like there's someone else in there ahead of them. There's no question. And
Yeah.
so if you have this level of trepidation or nervousness or feeling like you don't belong, don't worry about that. Just get in the room for sure, because otherwise you don't know what you don't know. To his point, to Quentin's point about learning that lesson that saved him $60,000, like, you have no idea what you don't know, that when it comes to wealth, tax strategy, all investment strategy, all these other things that people are doing, and they change constantly. But if you surround yourself with people that are doing these things actively Monday through Friday all the time, like, you learn lessons that can save you tens of thousands of dollars. Like, I did a coaching call with a girl the other day that I was selling her a $15,000 package for one of our products. And on the 15-minute call, she was paying for a year. I saved her $30,000 on the call with one simple thing. And her cost for the year was $15,000. And she was like,
Yeah.
oh, and it's, people come in with this sense of scarcity that they're laying out a bunch of money, but I think you need to turn it back on yourself and reframe of how you can exponentially create an ROI on that return. And that's up to you, the person coming to the event. And so, like, if you come in with the right attitude, you will get everything and more out of the investment.
Yeah. Yeah. Your conversation about the lady in the call that made just last night reminded me of a conversation I had. A guy that was anticipating coming to the event, but he didn't pull the trigger yet, sent me a deal, an arbitrage deal for Airbnb. And he was like, yeah, these are the numbers. This is what it looks like. He's not my program or anything like that. I was just giving him some advice.
Yep.
And I looked at the numbers and I called him immediately. I said, don't sign that property. He was getting ready to sign like in the next couple of days. The numbers that he ran were twice what they actually were because of one thing that he didn't know. And so he would have lost $1,000 a month.
Yep.
And that encouraged him to come to the event. So he's coming to the event now.
I was going to say he should have bought a ticket right after that as a thank you.
He's coming.
So, well, he's good people then, I guarantee. Because if that light bulb turned on for him, he's like ready. He's ready to grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Jeff. I want to wrap this up. We've been going a little long now. I
Right
could
on,
talk
man.
all day. But if you guys want to come out to the event, talk more to me and Jeff. Jeff's going to be there. It's going to be a fun time. It's a 3-day event in Asheville, North Carolina. The link's right down below, capitalconnectionevent.com/sign up. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks
See you
again,
there.
Jeff.
Thanks, Quinn.
Awesome, man.